All right, so asset protection. I love the way that this chapter opens up. You've got a really, honestly, kind of an emotional, tough story that we open up this chapter with, some stuff that you remember from your childhood about putting your helmet on, and risk management. So maybe kick us off with that story and how you like to frame up risk management and asset protection.
There was a kid I went to high school with. He was a really good baseball player, popular kid. And the summer after his senior year, his family would routinely go down to Rocky Point. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Would go down to Rocky Point. By the way, if you have property in Rocky Point, this was a whole different thing. This was people camped out in tents. There were no resorts down there. And they would go down there in ATV. Well, one day, this young man was off ATVing the summer after his senior year and didn't come back. And they went looking for him. A few hours later, his brother found him. He had crashed on his ATV and bled to death. And had he been wearing a helmet, in those days no one wore helmets for stuff like that. Had he been wearing a helmet, he probably would have walked away. Instead, it was a terrible tragedy for the family. And I remember it was one of the first encounters I had with death because I knew the kid, that kid was no longer around because of this accident. And I always think back to that day. If that family could have done anything, they would have had him put on a helmet before he went riding that day. The problem, though, with that type of accident is you can't put on the helmet after the accident. You have to put on the helmet before the accident. And asset protection is the same. You have to do your asset protection before you have a problem. You can't do it very well after you have a problem.
Yeah, and too many times even we'll see entrepreneurs that unfortunately are involved in litigation, and then after they get the subpoena or after they get the notice of the lawsuit, they're served. Oh, what can I do, right? And then you got fraudulent conveyance. There's a lot of things get ramped up if you try to get cute and play some games after the fact. So using the same metaphor of putting your helmet on, you got to make sure all of your asset protection is buttoned up ahead of time, and hence, that's the whole definition of it. But too many entrepreneurs that we see come to us and they have no asset protection plan. They're completely exposed. Their life's work from a business and even maybe personal wealth is just out there susceptible to creditors and predators.
Yeah, and a lot of entrepreneurs don't know that if they think, well, I don't really have any assets yet. If you're making money, you can still get a judgment and they'll garnish your wages, and they can do that for decades, depending on what went wrong. So make sure that even if you don't have assets yet, obviously if you have assets, but if you don't have assets yet and you're making good income, you should have really solid asset protection.
Yep. So the way we're going to frame up this chapter, I like to use the metaphor of building a castle. So if we can all envision a castle, there's different layers of defense, and that's how we like to instruct and guide our entrepreneur clients through asset protection. So the first layer of defense in a castle is going to be the moat. So for us here, this is going to be just strategic legal protections that are built into the laws, right? So unless you technically violate a law, technically, you shouldn't be getting sued, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is going to be the walls of the castle. That's like really your first true line of defense. The analogy there is going to be your insurance. So if you're getting attacked in the castle, hopefully the insurance or the walls will repel any intruder. The third line of defense is going to be that drawbridge. And so the drawbridge is there that, again, solidified, not allowing any intruders in. This is going to be the entity structure. So you want to make sure you have that drawbridge closed, which is really proper entity design so people can't pierce the corporate veil. And then the last kind of layer there in your wealth castle is going to be the hidden vaults. This is what we would consider.
What about the castle walls?
Castle walls was number 2.
Oh, okay.
Insurance.
I jumped ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I already talked about the castle walls. I'm better at listening. You're better at reading.
That's good.
But number 4 is as hidden vaults. Think of this as hidden vaults, hidden crevices, hidden spaces within the castle. The metaphor there is going to be asset protection trust. So even if someone has broached the moat, overcome the walls, barged in the drawbridge, they now need to go find these hidden vaults in order to truly come after all of your assets. So with that frame up, let's start with the moat, which is going to be just laws that are built in, inherent for every entrepreneur, just a few little things that they should be taking advantage of. What are a few of your favorites here?
Yeah, well, homestead exemption, you always need to know that. And if you take states like Texas and Florida that have unlimited homestead protection, that's powerful if you own an expensive home there. Very limited in states like California. So know what yours is, because that can impact how you handle your home, whether you want to have it titled in different ways. So homestead exemption is one of my favorite. And then also ERISA laws. ERISA laws are very powerful. Those are things like 401ks. IRAs are state laws, so you need to know what those are as well. But ERISA is incredibly tough for someone to pierce if they're suing you. And a good example is O.J. Simpson. He allegedly killed someone in criminal court. He actually killed someone in civil court. Those were the judgments. And yet the judgment that the families had against him was in the $60-70 million range and kept growing and growing and growing. They could never get any of the money because all his money was in ERISA plans, NFL pension, NFL 401k. And as long as he spent the money that came out, they couldn't get to any of that money. So it shows how strong ERISA laws are. And sometimes I meet entrepreneurs that they say, I don't want any money in any, qualified plans. I don't want any money in my 401k. And I take the attitude is, you don't want all of your money in a 401k. That would make no sense. But I like some of my money in there because it's super protected from an asset protection perspective, and that matters.
Yeah. So great job explaining the moat, first line of defense. Take advantage of these different protected asset classes, the homestead, the different laws, the rules and regulations of the road. As long as you're staying within those rules and regulations, technically you shouldn't be getting sued and you shouldn't have any exposure, right? Same thing to be said with your business. If you are selling products that are above the law, everything is good, buttoned up, your copy isn't, too aggressive to the FTC, et cetera, you shouldn't have any issues. So that's the first thing. But we do live in a litigious society. Yep. So oftentimes, even if you're buttoned up, there could be a lawsuit. And that's where the castle walls come into play. And the story here that we use in the book is from going back to my agriculture upbringing, really my dad's side of the family. A lot of when he was growing crops was alfalfa, and as alfalfa hay. And the process of alfalfa hay, it's very particular in that here in Arizona, you can harvest around 9 to 10 times per year. But when you go in and cut the alfalfa hay, you first cut it and you have to make sure you have the right dew point out, the right humidity, because you want to make sure it doesn't rot before you bale it. So you cut it, it lays out in the field, and then usually it's in the middle of the night when the humidity is down. You'll then rake it into piles, and then from the piles that are raked, you then start baling it. The problem is that if your hay gets rained on when it's out in the field or when it's raked, it ruins the entire crop. And so that's where insurance is very important, because if you only have 9 or 10 cuttings for the entire year, think of that as you have 9 or 10 opportunities to make revenue for the entire year. And there's seasonality, there's different yields in the different cuttings. But if you're maybe the hay's laying out there for 2 to 3 days per cutting, think of that now if it rains on one of those days, you could instantly lose 10 to 20% of your entire revenue for the entire year. So that's where the insurance comes into play of like you said in the beginning, put your helmet on ahead of the accident. So then if you're a farmer in this example, do you need to insure that? Or do you want to self-insure? What does that look like? And again, you got to buy the insurance before it rains, so to speak.